Okay, we're gonna do a few landing challenges, and I am going to not click on the right window first. I'm going to teach you how to land, or how to land better, or how to land at all, or how to fly. One of those things. Alright, so we're just gonna start on a pretty easy landing challenge. We'll just go with this one in Chile, and we've got pretty much no wind for this guy. Nice long runway. Well, not too long, but all things considered, 3,600 feet. We'll say that's okay. We're gonna go over kind of the basics of how to land an aircraft and talk through maybe some of the things that can help you touch up your scores and help to bring home and kind of refine a better and better score for some of these landings. Not all landings are graded, which is great, especially in real life. It would suck to land and have a card held up every time, but we kind of, as pilots, mentally do that to ourselves anyway. But this is a great tool to kind of show us exactly what's going on, show us exactly where we're kind of missing and where we're hitting, basically, for our landing proficiency and accuracy. So what we're going to do to start with is, I think this guy gives you 10 on the flaps already. Yeah. So I'm going to keep the RPM about 2,200. 22 to 2,100 in the Cessnas is enough to kind of keep you with one notch of flaps, flying pretty much straight and level, right into the wide arc range. You can see I've got a G1000 add-on because, of course, the base G1000 is crashing my game for some reason, so we just patch over that. We're pretty much right on the white arc of that speed tape, and that's kind of indicating where we can deploy the rest of the flaps. So it's good that we're already there because we're set, we're ready to go. I'm just holding the nose up, and I'm actually trimming the aircraft out so that there's no real pressure on my controls, so that I can basically let go, like right now. We can see this vertical speed is not going, well, now it's kind of going somewhere, but it's staying relatively close to zero. What I'm going to do now is kind of start to turn towards final here, and I'm going to pull back our RPM. If you want to get technical with it, about 1,500, and you can just start to kind of listen to what that sounds like. With that, I'm going to pull the nose up a little bit, and you'll see the speed will reduce now, because with that throttle out, we're actually not generating as much thrust. So when we pull that nose up, we are requiring more angle of attack to keep us in the sky. That's causing us drag and slow down a little bit. I also put in next notch of flaps. I'm going full flaps now. No wind, so I'm just going to bring this in as about 65. And we'll do this approach twice. There's a lot to talk about, but basically I've got it trimmed for 65 now. I just allow that nose to follow the speed, and I allow my hand on my throttle to follow my glide path. So if I feel like I'm coming in short, which I did right there, I add a little throttle, just a bump. And I don't change much with my nose. There's a lot of people that will just try and fight it, and they'll just change the pitch. But when you change that pitch, you're going to dramatically change your speed. So I'm bringing it right over the 3-2, looking down the runway now, transitioning, just holding it off. I just don't let it touch yet. We just look all the way down the runway and just hold, hold, hold. I might shoot past a little bit, but whatever. Nice, easy landing. We just kind of fight to keep it on center line. I'm keeping still a little bit of back pressure. You can pull back even more and kind of ride a wheelie down the runway. That kind of helps aerodynamically brake. But we'll just get on the brakes here. Throttle's all the way back. Come to a stop. See what score we get. We floated past a little bit, so we're just going to have to touch that up. You can see my landing precision wasn't the greatest. The ground roll, we were within 1 foot of the center line, and the smoothness was pretty good. We'll take those. I'm going to do it one more time and kind of talk through things a little bit as I go again, and kind of really dive into, we're looking for like the perfect balance between pitch and power. That's going to bring in a nice stable approach. So for these first approaches, if you're all over the place on your landings, the best advice I can give you is stop looking at the actual landing and start looking at the approach. So if your approach is all over the place, you feel like you're unstable, you feel like you don't know what's going on to begin with, the rest of the landing's not going to be any good. And that's kind of something that we see a lot in actual flying. So I'll have my students kind of call out a stabilized approach and start to show them what that looks like versus an unstable approach. So what we're going to do to get our stable approach is we're just going to keep the plane flying level and bring that power about 2100 right now. And I'm trimming the aircraft so I don't have to. The trim is a little sensitive, you can tell. Basically, so I don't have to have any pressure on the control surfaces. See, I've got it trimmed to nose high still. The nose wants to just come up. So I should be able to let go right now. Plane stays about even. And you're always trimming for an airspeed. It's kind of like holding the airspeed. Whatever airspeed you trim for, the plane will want to stay at. And that's a huge key when landing. So if we're trimmed for right around 86 right now, watch what happens when I add power. I'm not pulling the nose back, I'm just letting go. We start to climb, but we don't change our speed very much. There it's starting to roll down, but in that very beginning, our speed stayed just about the same. So that shows us something. The plane will always seek that 86. Now the throttle's all the way off, speed's coming down, nose is coming down. It's looking to replace that 86 with something. It doesn't have any power off the engine, so it uses gravity. As it starts to climb higher and higher on that speed, you can see we're getting close to 90. The nose is just coming up. It's trying to seek that 86 again. It'll go through some oscillations and be a little unstable, but that's kind of what it's doing. So we've got it trimmed for 86, great. Now we can just control that throttle to flatten things out with our approach. This is going to be a really poor approach because I've got way too high of an airspeed. I haven't used any extra flaps. So you can see we're just going to float past, and if you've got extra energy in for your landings, this is why we came in at 65 before, we're just not going to be landing. We're just going to use all this runway up, nothing's going to happen. We could force the plane to land, but it's not going to work very well. You won't get a nice smooth landing, you won't get a good score, and in real life you risk damaging the front nose gear and striking the propeller on the pavement. So you can see we flew way past the runway on that one. Terrible score. We still got a B somehow. I'm not sure how that works at all. Anyway, we overrun the runway, got a B, 1 on our landing precision, but our ground roll, good centerline discipline. That just shows you centerline discipline is everything, even if you roll off the runway. Alright, this one, I'm going to really try and bring all these things together. Now, we kind of talked about how that airspeed is affected by trim and how the power plays into that. So, knowing that, we can now trim the aircraft for whatever desired airspeed that we want. On these Cessnas, I like if there's no wind, about 65. This kind of menu showing us some speeds was suggesting 70. We could go with 70 as well. 65, I feels like gives you a little more precision, especially if there's no wind. So to set this one up, we're just going to do everything the same, but I'm going to actually deploy flaps and kind of get everything more situated than it was before. So again, I'm trimming the aircraft right now so I don't have to do very much. Staying around 90 knots is fine for right now. I'm still kind of traveling over to the airport here. And I don't want to descend yet. Just kind of adjusting my pitch to stop a descent. So we're getting on to final here. I'm going to start to bring back the throttle. And at the same time, I'm trading throttle for pitch. So as I bring that throttle off, I'm not allowing that nose to sink. And you'll notice our speed will start to drop. So now we're well into the white arc, now that I've done that little trade. I can grab my second notch of flaps. Now I'm going to let the nose come down because we've got a lot of drag, and I don't want to get too slow. I don't want to go slower than 65. I'm going to grab my last notch of flaps, that's flaps full, and I'm really going to have to let that nose drop to hold that speed. You can see how much those flaps affect us. So now I'm coming in too shallow, too short. We'd hit those trees. So if I just adjust throttle, and just try this with your own setup, just adjust your throttle and watch the nose come up. Now you can start to realize you can adjust this with just throttle. My other hand isn't doing a thing. We're not precisely on 65, but I'm not chasing it all over the place with pitch. Because pitch is going to change our airspeed. I want to go slower, pitch the plane up. There's 65. follow it through, keep it on the way down, going fast again, pitch up. If I'm not headed towards those numbers, looks like I'm headed a little past those numbers right now, I'm going to bring the throttle back. Let the nose naturally fall, hold that 65 with pitch. I don't have to do much because we're already trimmed for it. I can bring it right to 3.2. I'm all the way out on my throttle, and I'm just transitioning now. We're just floating down the runway, looking down the runway, letting the last little bit of our airspeed come out. I'm just holding it. I just let it touch. You just kind of feel that rear landing gear transition down. Right as that nose comes up, you just kind of let it touch, and you just hold everything nice and still right after you touch. You keep that back pressure in, and you can start to apply more as you slow down. But that's how you get a really nice, stable approach and landing. But if you're having trouble with your landings, just start with a stable approach. That's the best thing you can do, is realize when you're on target and on speed. If you're not, that's when I tell my students in real life to just do a go around. In the simulator, you can take it to the ground and see how it works out, but I guarantee you it will not be what you want. So just start with trying to get a stabilized approach. Start by messing with that pitch and power to hold on that airspeed and that angle of glide, and just pick a point. Our point on these runways is going to be the numbers. Just pick that point and fly the airplane to the numbers, transition right over top of them, roll that throttle off as soon as you've made it. But I hope all of that helps a little bit. I'll do a couple more of these on some of the more tricky crosswind and windier landings. We'll just kind of go from there, see how much you guys like this and how much it helps you. But yeah, I hope that helps.